Afternoon. My name's Jag Tumbar, and I'm the Business Development Manager at Hypergroup. And welcome to our second instalment of our meetup, To Affinity and Beyond. So To Affinity and Beyond is a regular consumer analytics and data science meetup hosted by the team here at Hyper. Our aim is basically to provide practical insights about how data can be used to improve commercial performance with a particular focus on the retail and brand space. So our last To Affinity and Beyond meetup was a great success with over 250 signups. During the meetup, we covered two topics: the key skills to thrive in analytics and data science, and how affinity analytics can be used to avoid shopping failures, featuring speakers from Asda and the University of Leeds. And if you missed the event, you can find the recording on Hyper's YouTube channel. From the event, we had lots of positive feedback and also other challenges and themes that we thought we could look to incorporate into future meetups. Which basically brings us on to today's event around loyalty and personalisation. So many loyalty programs fail because they're not data-driven. When brands don't truly understand customers through data analytics, it's almost impossible for them to build meaningful relationships. So a lack of insight from the data can also make it difficult to personalise successfully. White Label Loyalty is on a mission to bring data and digital transformation into the loyalty sector, so brands can build effective relationships with their customers. Achille Traore, CEO of White Label Loyalty, is here to talk about the importance of data-driven customer loyalty, what it means, and how businesses can look to achieve it. Over to you, Achille.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack. Appreciate it. Right. First slide. Right. So yes, hi guys. My name is Achille, and I'm the CEO and founder of White Label Loyalty. We are an enterprise SaaS business specializing in data-driven technologies surrounding loyalty, and what we do is really help businesses increase revenue retention by understanding, predicting, and influencing customer behavior. And the reason we're doing this is because over 75% of loyalty programs fail. And yes, I know it's a huge number. And if you combine this with the fact that it's 10 times more expensive to acquire a new customer than retaining an existing one, solving this problem becomes really, really important. And there are a number of reasons why loyalty programs fail. From a business perspective, they're often quite expensive to set up and run. They offer very little flexibility, and this is why you see so many loyalty schemes doing exactly the same thing. And they don't generally talk to the systems of businesses, so it's kind of a siloed little project. If you look at it from a customer perspective, the single biggest reason why they don't work is the lack of personalization, which is really what we are focusing on today. And this lack of personalization stems from the fact that most loyalty programs are not data-driven. And at White Label Loyalty, we believe that all loyalty solutions should be data-driven. Because if it's not data-driven, how can you then measure the success of it? So let's break the elephant in the room. What is loyalty? I think if you ask a room with 10 people what loyalty is, you probably get 5 different answers. So what we've done at White Label Loyalty is that we've actually broken it down. So in our world, loyalty is all about a value exchange between consumer and a brand. And in order to break that down further, it's all about the data, right? So make it easy for customers to give you data, have the right tools in place so you can make sense of that data, and then you can then use that data to make data-driven decisions. So I'm going to explain to you a little bit on the process of achieving this, okay? So we've broken it down in 4 simple processes. The first one is information, the second one is data, insight, and then the final is personalization. So I'm going to touch on each one of these briefly, and then focus a little bit more time on the personalization part of it. So The first part is information. So you need to know where you're starting from. You'll be amazed how many loyalty projects we are involved in where it's just something that has been decided to be implemented, but they don't actually know where they're starting from. So that's really, really important. So if you know where you're starting from, it's very easy for you then to start measuring where you are aiming to go. Another really important part is to get the strategy in place. That means that you need to understand the levers that you want to pull. And there are so many different levers you can pull. And the mistake that many do is to try to pull all levers at once, and you can't. So if you want to increase basket size, you can't also increase the price because that kind of contradicts each other. So depending on what you want to achieve, you can decide which levers you want to really pull. And the final point is measurement. How do you measure success? And this is another big red herring that we see when we look at loyalty solutions. And they say, well, this works really, really well. It's amazing. And we say, based on what? And there's no metrics, or there's no data to support the fact that it's successful or not. So that's the first part. The second part is data. Okay. We believe that everything should start with the data, and everything related to loyalty, personalization should use data as the point of truth. So you don't have to do guessing games and assume that the loyalty solution is working or not. If you use the data in the right way, you should be able to know if it's working or not. And what we've seen is that in order to get a good solution in place, you need to be able to really make sense of the data. So you need the data to be structured in the right way. And in many enterprise businesses that we've seen, the data is actually siloed in different systems. You can have a fragmented point of sale structure. So if you have multiple point of sale solutions, it might be hard to actually bring them together. And so you need to really make sure that based on the strategy you put in place, do you have the right data structure to be able to achieve those goals that you set yourself? And this is things that we really help customers with. So data is really, really important, because once you set up the data in the right place, you can then move into insight. And really, if you see data as the new oil, then insight is actually the refinery. So this is where you derive value from that data. So at White Label Loyalty, what we do with this data is that we break down the process in three components. We believe that loyalty and personalization needs to go beyond just transactions. So at the left-hand side, you can see the data connections, or the input, or as we call it, events. So every customer action is classed as an event. Now, what you want is to be able to take into all these events into account and to make them rewardable, or to derive insight from them. So when the events are flowing through the White Label Loyalty platform, that's where the magic happens. So based on the rules, the strategy that you put in place, the data is then transformed into insight, which then transforms into a data-driven strategy. So if your output and your desired output is to actually increase retention, then you can measure that. How much do you increase retention by? If it's to create segmentation or even micro segments, then it would define which data points that you want to look at to create those segments. And if it's to predict customer churn, then you can use the AI module to actually look at all these different data points and define those characteristics to predict that customer lifetime value, and where to identify customers that are at risk of churning. So really, all this is only possible if you use the right technology. So that's the main thing. So have the right tools in place to make sense of the data. So the final point is personalization. And I've used an example here of Netflix because, I think they've done it quite well. And I think Adam is touching on this as well later on in his presentation. So if you watch Netflix, you'll notice that you're getting different thumbnails. You'll notice that the structure in your profile is maybe different from your partner's or your friend's profile. And this is because they are looking at your viewership data They're looking at what kind of categories you're interested in, what device you're using, what type of movies you looked at before, etc. And then they use that to really personalize that thumbnail for you. So if you are interested in thrillers, you would probably see something like this. Whilst if you are interested in romance, you'll see the one on the left. And they have a lot of these ones, and they're changing it all the time. Now, personalization doesn't stop there. I think what's important to realize is that once this happens, a good solution, a good engine, will also be able to take into account the fact that actually we tried this thumbnail, was it successful or not? If it wasn't, then an AI engine should actually come in and discount that and try the next one, and then actually provide a result on the best way to hyper-personalize content for those users. I think many of you are probably smiling because, despite all this, I probably spend about 20 minutes trying to find a film to watch at Netflix. So, okay, looking at personalization online is relatively straightforward compared to personalization in the physical world. So I wanted to bring in an example of a brand that's done pretty well in the physical world, and that's Nike. Members of the Nike Plus app can actually scan a QR code when they go to the store to check in. And when they check in, it brings up the profile from the previous purchases online, and it interrogates the stock management in the store and actually pulls in relevant information for that user. So it could be anything from size, what type of products they bought before, and then it can also suggest recommended discounts available. And I think this is a really, really nice way of bridging the gap from personalization online to personalization in the physical world. Because to be fair, there's a big difference between the personalization that we expect when we're online versus what we expect in store. And in order to save high street, I think more and more of solutions like this will be required. The final example I wanted to show you in regards to personalization is actually a project that we built. And this is something that we built in Dubai, and it's the world's first countrywide loyalty solution, covering all aspects of life in Dubai, from dining to fashion to hospitality, travel. And the aim of this was to create a really frictionless user journey for all customers. So we using a card linking solution to be able to enroll bank cards. And once you've enrolled your bank cards, you can transact anywhere in the ecosystem, anywhere in Dubai, and you automatically get points and cash back, which you can then redeem for further transactions. Now, what's happening behind the scenes is that we use this data to provide super targeted offers, to know what type of rewards you're interested in, what type of transactions you make, what's the average amount of transactions, etc. So it makes it really hyper-personalized user journey. And this app launched less than a couple of months ago, and already it's got really good traction, and this is just going to continue to grow and become even more targeted. So the state of play, really, why is it so important with personalization and loyalty? And the main thing is that customers are actually expecting personalized experience. This is it. Gone are the days where we just took anything that the brands gave us. We expect a personalized experience. And in the US, the average person has 27 loyalty programs that they're members of. So how do you stand out if you're not personalizing? And more customers now understand the value of the data. And with GDPR and talk about data on almost a daily basis, it's really important that you respect consumers' data. So if they are giving you that data, they expect you to use that data in a good way to be able to deliver a better service to them. And that's really the state of play where we are now. And that's why it's really important to provide this personalization to your customers. And it's not just me saying this because we're running, we operate a data-driven loyalty solution. The proof is actually there. And there's a direct correlation between profitability and personalization and loyalty. There's also a direct link between kind of brand affinity and how you personalize content to customers. But one of the main things here is the correlation between customers actually wanting to give you more data and they wanted to share more data if you improve the experience. And I think that kind of summarizes the importance of data-driven loyalty in everything that we do. Now, the final slide, takeaways, is really, if you take anything away from this, is that data-driven loyalty is here to stay. Personalization is really, really important in everything that we do. And if you want to break it down in a simple 4-step process, start with the information, make sure that you have the right strategy in place, make sure that you know which levers you want to pull, then make sure that data is structured. Are you missing any data points? Is this a fragmented data solution that you have? Can you simplify it by using receipt scanning to overcome challenges of maybe a fragmented EPOS environment? Once you have that data in place and you structured it and you know what you are doing with it, you can then start deriving insight from that data. So in order to derive insight, again, you need the right tools in place. So the white label loyalty engine can interpret the data and create a data-driven strategy for you. And once you got to that final stage, then the holy grail is that personalization. The personalization is really a way for you to create a direct relationship between you and your brand, whether it comes to communication or rewards or simply improving the user experience as a general fact. Thank you very much. You can visit our website or you can follow us on LinkedIn, and I'm now open up for any question you might have.
Cool. Well, Achille, thanks for that very insightful and interesting presentation that you've put together there. I'm sure the listeners can obviously take a lot away from it. And then, that takes us on to questions. So we've had one come through from Claire. It's a great topic for her, something that she's very passionate about. She's recognised that the cost of living crisis is really upon us and it's biting a lot of people. But believing that all retailers should be looking at that and building out their loyalty schemes within customers and driving retention and frequency. She's keen to understand, who do you think are the ones that adopt this the most effectively? So she's hinted at Tesco Club Card as being the one that comes to mind.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think the Tesco Club Card has done a really good job, actually, because you can see that impact straight away. So when you're using, they're very clear on showing the difference between having a club card and not having a club card, and that shows an impact straight away. I think Pret has done it decently well as well, because people tend to drink a lot of coffee, and they created a subscription package where you can have quite a few coffees a day. And I think it's solutions where it's easy for customers to see the value. Yeah. They can just, they don't need to be mathematicians to understand that it's a valuable solution to them.
Definitely. And do you think the pandemic's affected loyalty between customers and particular brands?
I think the pandemic has, in our case, because our platform is, it's the future of loyalty, so it's a little bit ahead of its time, and the pandemic has actually speeded up the process of enterprise businesses being in the stage now where they're actually ready to do it. Yeah. I think it's probably shortened that lead time by 5 years, so that's why we're really busy, and and it's a perfect storm for us, really. But it's also forced a lot of these businesses to explore digital channels and really try to understand customers, even though they didn't do it before, because that's the only means that they had to actually communicate with customers during the pandemic.
Yeah. And the final question, do you find retailers and brands tend to focus their efforts on engaging new customers rather than actually rewarding and retaining the customers that they've already got, and trying to drive loyalty there and creating value there, because they're already in at that point.
Absolutely, that's an excellent question, and I think this is kind of the message from us at White Label. We've spent a lot of time understanding the loyalty ecosystem, and when you speak to a marketing director, for instance, and you ask how much they have in terms of customer acquisition budget, they will give you a figure. If you ask them how much they have in retention budget, you usually get the blank face, right? So, and what we're trying to understand and trying to get them to understand is the fact that if you have the right retention mechanism, like the White Label platform, you don't have to work so hard. You can actually make your budget work harder. You can identify the right customers to focus on. You can also identify opportunities for upselling. And it's also much more cost effective to retain existing customers and upsell those than trying to always get new customers. But in order to do that in an efficient way, you need the right tools. I think that's what's been missing. So yeah, spot on question, really.
Cool. I'll just see if there's any other questions coming through. But if not, Achille, really, really appreciate obviously that insightful presentation. It builds us on quite nicely onto our second topic, and obviously looking at the analytics behind personalization. So for this, I'll pass over to Adam Barrowcliff, the co-founder and CDO at Hyper.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Jag, and thanks, Achille, for what is a fantastic lead into the topic I'm going to talk about. So the analytics behind personalization. So we've obviously heard there that for data-driven loyalty to be effective, one of the cornerstone pieces is effective personalization in terms of building that customer lifetime value, protecting against churn, and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm going to talk to you today about the analytics that sit behind that. And we're going to first cover the building blocks of effective personalization, and who's doing it well and how they're actually going about that, what the analytical techniques are that are involved in personalization, and then how and where to get started and how to learn more about that. So I think when considering the analytics part of personalization, it's really important to actually consider the context, the full picture of how to do this in an effective manner. So here I've put my thoughts into what an effective personalization recipe is, and what the ingredients are. So starting on the left with the interaction. So what is the interaction? What's the touch point with the customer? What's the channel? Where does it sit in their customer journey? So what is your chance as a business to use that touch point to influence that customer's behavior, create their engagement, and get them to take the action that you want to get them to watch that content, to buy that product. It's really important to start with that as a starting point, because those different touch points will be able to consume different types of data, different tools and techniques will go into deciding how and what people get presented, and it's really important to start with that context. So then we move on to, okay, well, what data do you have as a starting point? And Achille showed a great slide around the events that you can capture. So what are all the customer touch points? What is all the data that you can gather about them and their experiences and their interactions? But you then have to turn that into some form of meaning. So if you're going to go on to personalize and give these customers a one-to-one experience, you're going to have to translate those raw materials in data into some actual meaning. And this is where analytics, AI, machine learning can help support with creating features to help us identify meaningful ways that we can act upon that data. And there's still, as we'll go through some examples, there's still a healthy amount of human input that features even in the tech giants here as well. Fourthly, once you've created that meaning, you know you need to be able to serve that out in a way that supports that interaction. So lots of these machine learning techniques are very data intensive. A lot of heavy lifting needs to be done. How can you think about the right kind of architecture, the right kind of technology stack to really set you up for success in providing those one-to-one experiences? And then finally, you'll have a recommendation of this is the type of thing that a customer is interested in seeing in this interaction. But what's the right product? You need to guarantee the quality of that product to guarantee that that customer experience is a success. Okay, so who is doing it well? Now, I don't think there's going to be any surprises on this slide. The tech giants are all doing, great things in personalization. But for a lot of the remainder of the talk, I'd like to focus in on Netflix and Spotify, who are doing particularly well. So in the channel, in the build up to this event, we shared out a couple of videos of Netflix and Spotify and introductions to how they are doing personalization. If you didn't catch those before today, I'd suggest going back to the group and just having a watch of those. They're really great. They're really informative, and they'll probably do it a lot better than I'll tell you today. But I've used a lot of the ideas from that to talk through today as well. Okay, so to cover the first part of that recipe of personalization. So it's that interaction piece. This is your chance to engage with a customer at a point in their customer journey. What are examples of those, and where might they be for Netflix, for Spotify, and just for a retailer in general? So for Netflix, we see that they personalize the genres and categories that we see. So in our Netflix feeds, each of the sets of rows are personalized to us to be interesting genres that we would take a look at. Obviously, within those genres, the actual title or the product, if you like, is personalized within that to be relevant to us. So picking out the most likely candidates that we're going to click on and consume that content. Also, the sort order of how they'll appear is aligned to what's mostly related to us and to our interests in terms of what Netflix knows about us. And as Achille touched on as well, we're actually Netflix are actually personalizing the artwork as well. So for that image to really jump off the page and grab you to get you to consume that content, what is the imagery that's actually going to do that? And then some of the more standard channels that Netflix still uses via email, they'll tell you about new releases that are relevant, and they'll also send you an activity summary, which helps you learn about how what have you been consuming, or if you've got children, what are they consuming, to just really remind you of the value that the Netflix platform is providing to you. So in a really similar way, the touch points that Spotify focus on a lot around genre and categories. This is going to be a really important piece when you've got such a huge amount of content to help users navigate. They do this really well in their Discover Weekly playlist, which is a curated playlist designed to almost sit at the edges of your personal taste and things that you won't have heard before, and they do a fantastic job of that. I'll be coming to that later on. In a similar way, you can play any track from an artist or a particular song or album, and hit the radio button, and they'll continue on that theme for you around personalized recommendations around that artist, song, or album. Again, they use email as a channel, and they also have some album picks and top recommended songs in a sort of classic recommender system way as well. And then if we think about retail for a moment, so we all know retailers will contact us with relevant products. How can they do that in a really engaging way? There might be personal incentives attached to some of that in email, and a great way to build loyalty, and linking back to the question there around rewarding actual loyal customers instead of new customers. Personalized incentives are a great way to do that when you know that a customer would value a certain product, for example, or promotion, etc. And online, we've obviously got a huge opportunity to personalize. So things like targeted media, where you can help your suppliers get in front of the right audiences. Again, things like the product sort order, when a customer clicks on a category or searches, you can be providing the personalized ranking to them of the products that appeal the most within those categories. And then in terms of physical stores, you obviously can utilize a lot of what you learn online to personalize offline. So what kind of demographics have you got in your stores, and how can your store propositions be tailored towards those demographics? And in terms of printed media, obviously that could be a big cost for some retailers. You really want to know that you're getting the right type of content in front of the right kind of customer to really drive an omni-channel message, whether that's to store or online. So these are the places where we can influence customers on that journey and really enhance their experience. So I want to drill in and focus on Netflix for a while, and particularly into the piece around genres. So on the left here, that is a quick snippet of my Netflix profile, and they've obviously established that I use Netflix to consume comedy, and three sort of comedy genres stacked up next to each other. And they've not done a bad job. Superbad and Jimmy Carr, I think they're quite close to the mark there. So Netflix provide these personalized rows of information. So irreverent comedies, witty TV comedies, Netflix is a joke are the ones I've got there. But how can they pick that? So they have around 3,500 searchable categories, but really this doesn't actually scratch the surface of it. Once they get into everything they know about us and can personalize these categories towards us as consumers, there's actually 75,000 alt genres. So some great examples of those here. So gory foreign satanic stories, visually striking nostalgic dramas, and understated romantic road trip movies. Now, that's going to be quite difficult for just an algorithm to come up with. And it's going to be difficult to create 75,000 of those. So how do they actually go about doing that? We'll come back to that more when we start discussing the analytics. They're also, as Achille mentioned, personalizing the artwork. So here we've got 9 different images of Stranger Things. They want to know which of those are going to appeal to us the most. So which of those pieces of artwork is going to bet you click on that content and keep you engaged in the platform. Is it something more focused on the horror angle of Stranger Things, or the kind of teen aspect of that, or indeed a Ghostbusters theme, as we see in one of the images there? And if you think about what does Netflix need to know about us as consumers to make those ridiculously varied decisions, they need to know a lot about us. And also, as Achille mentioned as well, a rigorous testing program around seeing what works after they've made those initial guesses. So just to stick with that for a while in terms of personalized artwork, and speak about the decisions that are being made a little bit more. So if we're thinking about Netflix wants to serve us Pulp Fiction, they've established, we're interested in that genre, and that title is something good to put in front of us. But which artwork are they going to go with? So here we've got an image of Uma Thurman or John Travolta. which of those is going to likely get our click. Now, they can use all of our information around what we've engaged with in the past to create various attributes of what we're interested in. So it's taking the genres that we're interested in, but also all of the metadata that they know about those titles. So out there, we've most likely all got attributes of how much of a preference we've got towards Uma Thurman or John Travolta, and they can pick for each of us, which is most likely to get our vote. In a similar way, if we've been recommended Good Will Hunting, what artwork are they going to focus on there? Is it the romance angle in terms of the artwork that we can see there? Or is it going with more of a comedy perspective with a well-known comedic actor with Robin Williams? And they can use how heavily we've leaned towards those themes of romance or comedy in our browsing and viewing history. So even just across those examples of Uma Thurman, John Travolta, romance and comedy, there's obviously a ridiculous amount that Netflix could know about us and ways to describe us. So what I'd like to paint here is just a picture of how much information they could access. What affinity we've got towards all different types of actors, the themes that we've got, and how they can get to bring in multiple of those themes together to create us alt genres like gory, foreign, satanic stories. But it's not hard to see how they are all separate attributes: gory, foreign, satanic, and how they can start to bring those attributes of what they understand about us together to create these really niche genres. So they're the touch points. They were the places that Netflix have to personalize our experience. So if we rewind for a second and start to talk about what is the data that can power that. So what data points drive personalization? So for Netflix, it's things that we've searched for, so explicitly typed into their search bar. They're recording the things that we've actually been looking for. They're looking at what we've browsed, so clicked into for more information, etc. The key one being what we've actually watched and how much time we've put into those programs. You can obviously actually rate Netflix shows as well with a thumbs up, thumbs down. And they can also look at ratings from third-party databases like IMDb to gain further information on whether it's generally thought of as a quality title. They can look at the classic metrics around email interaction, so from the new releases and summary, were we opening those emails, were we engaging with them, and then obviously any details that they know about us when we sign up. In a really similar way, Spotify can look at lots and lots of similar data, what we've searched for, what we've listened to. Quite a key difference would be the number of plays. Obviously, we might listen to the same songs on repeat, or I certainly do. So factoring in that they would weight more heavily in your sort of landscape of what you listen to. Things that you favorited, and another key one, which is things that you've added to a playlist. So as far as retailers go, we've got some similar metrics there, but we've got some additional ones as well. So things that we've browsed and searched for, things that we've added to basket and purchased, they're very similar to the Netflix and Spotify examples there. But we get some quite interesting additions that sit within our decision making about how to personalize for a retail interaction. Things like what the price of the product was that the customer is in the market for, whether that's been promoted and marketed, and any other product details that we know about that, and how likely we are to say accept that as a substitute if our product's not been in stock. And we were provided another one in a grocery example. Did we happily accept that substitute, or did we kind of demand a refund? So these are all the raw data. It's quite difficult to immediately look at that list and know how you're going to jump to effective personalization. So this is really where we have to turn that data into meaning, something human that we can act upon, and that's where AI techniques come in, and machine learning, etc. So a great example of this is Spotify's Discover Weekly system. So Discover Weekly, as we mentioned earlier, is a way for Spotify to create us a playlist of related songs that are related to our tastes, but potentially pushing the boundaries of what we're interested in to really help us discover new things and keep engaged with their platform. So how do they do this? So these stats are from quite a while ago. They'll be bigger than this now, but they had 100 million people on their platform, and they had 2.5 billion playlists that've been made from those 100 million people. So every time somebody adds a song to a playlist, it's essentially vouching for that song, that's something that somebody else could be interested in. Now, what their systems do, I'll look at the relationships between all of these different playlists and the songs within those playlists. And those algorithms are looking for the affinity there and the overlap, really to start to look at the groups of people, communities that are looking at the same types of content and what content shows up in those time after time. And this is through a technique called collaborative filtering. So just to really simplify collaborative filtering, so if myself and Jag have listened to the same 10 songs, and Achille's listened to 9 of those also, the algorithm knows it's a no-brainer to recommend that final song to Achille and pop that in his Discover Weekly playlist. And that's how individual recommendations are sourced from that view of community. And the way Spotify describe it is that's human musical choices curated for the individual because they've all come from individual playlists. So it's probably not too hard for you to see how Netflix works in exactly the same way. Instead of playlists, they'll be looking at just our browsing behavior, our watched and streaming behavior, and looking for the overlaps and the affinity between all different customers, and helping surface recommendations to people based on who they look like in terms of their community, who are they close to in terms of the types of content that they've been consuming. And again, it works in a retail context as well. Collaborative filtering works in exactly the same way to surface product recommendations. So both Netflix and Spotify have that collaborative filtering approach in place, but then they've got the same challenge around, whilst that might surface recommendations, it doesn't actually tell you why, and you have to look to other techniques to assign the human labels that we're expecting to see. So you might be able to see in this Spotify example here, there's a subgenre called rap caviar. How do you come up with that? What's the you see that set of songs? How do you assign it that label of rap caviar? So this data set that they've built through collaborative filtering and the affinity and understanding all the relationships between different songs, that gives them an amazing starting point for techniques like clustering and nearest neighbor analysis to really create those small groups of individual songs in these sort of niche alt genres that are crying out for a label. They then look to things like natural language processing, where they're able to scrape things like, in the Spotify example, track metadata, news articles, blogs, and other text from around the web to start to process what that genre might represent, and do that at scale. And then finally, I'm sure there's some human curation goes on to oversee this and just align those definitions as well, helping them to reach tens of thousands of alt genres. Interestingly as well, Spotify also analyzed the audio tracks, the raw audio to see if songs are like each other. And the real benefit for them here is they don't need to wait to see if it's been added to playlists and how it's been consumed. They know from the raw audio itself if it's going to fit into a certain alt genre, and it helps them go personalizing from day one for new content. And hopefully you can see from here we're talking about these alt genres, but hopefully it's easy to see how these types of approaches could be used to create some of those other novel attributes as well: romance, comedy, gore, etc. So what should you do with this data? So if your objective is to create this three-dimensional view of your customer, your customer DNA, you want to use all of this data and store it in a really sensible way to leverage for different types of personalization. And those interactions that we talked about earlier will use these in different ways. So really, the way sort of the tech giants are doing it now is to collate these things that they know about products and customers into feature stores, which are essentially just a smart way of storing what they know about products and customers to leverage in the future. So for the Netflix example, for products, you might be able to label products as uplifting, gory, romantic. And if you roll those things up, you might be able to understand what a customer's propensity is towards Uma Thurman, gore, and how much they like female leads, and thus helping you reach the recommendation of Kill Bill. Same for a retailer. We can start to describe our products in really rich ways. So whether it's a premium product, is it scratch cooking, is it ethical? And as you roll us up to a customer level, it's helping you reach those attributes about a customer, about what's their propensity to be affluent, to be vegan, or to be a scratch cook. So having to do gather that amount of data and land that into those feature stores brings us onto the technology that underpins that. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on technology, but it's important to mention whilst we're talking through just what are the technology considerations. So in terms of the use cases, really important to because there's so much complexity here that we've talked through some complex stuff there. You need to know what aspect of that machine learning you can actually batch and make sure that it's run overnight, ready to be acted upon the next day. And you need to know what components of that need to be enacted in real time. So hopefully you're doing the intelligent stuff on batch with the stuff that demands the connectivity down to fit, downstream applications, that you're then doing that more lighter weight thing in real time. So in terms of the tech that you need to be able to stand that up, these days you need to be in the cloud. What cloud provider are you going to back? Which one supports your technology, your architecture the best? And in particular, how are you getting that data and analytics done at scale? Is it a warehouse approach, or is it a lake house approach? And some of the big guys there, Snowflake and Databricks, they're big players in that space. So backing which technology is going to get you to that scalable analytics is really going to help your personalization capabilities. And then what skills does your organization have? So your tech structure and your vision needs to align to the people that you've got to actually do this for you. Do they know Python? Do they know Spark, etc.? So approaching the end of the talk here. So just some thoughts on how to get started. So for the data scientists on the call, what's the best way to start to learn some of this stuff? So starting with recommender systems and how to build them out. Some great courses online. On Coursera, there's a recommender specialization that's run by the University of Minnesota. Really great course. For a slightly shorter journey, you can look to Udemy and Frank Kane's course there. Around 10 hours of content on building recommender systems and touching upon some more complex topics than I've talked about, matrix factorization, deep learning techniques, etc. And then if you're a bit more of a practical person, or you've done those courses and you want to apply your skills, there's a Kaggle challenge that's actually just ended today, I think. So apologies, told you too late. You've missed out on that £50,000 prize money. But a really great place to grab a good data set and start to work with some data in a hands-on way to apply any learning. I'd recommend following the Netflix technology blog on Medium, and of course, stay looped into our community around to Affinity and beyond, and learn from the community around all these things as well. So just before you get started, though, do watch out. There's some real key things, some practical things before you start to personalize. So popular things are always applicable to a lot of people. I think there's a risk of getting too into personalization and making that your only source of communicating with customers. Always make room for things that are popular, and you will get that broad appeal. You can't go wrong. A balanced approach is best. And we don't, in a social media example, having something that isn't personalized can help us keep us out of our own echo chambers and that kind of thing. In a similar way, Spotify have this great concept of the foothills of our taste. To describe the boundary of what you're interested in and pushing you into those new experiences with songs that you've not heard before. So I think a balance of things that are super relevant to you and really in your sweet spot, and other things that are pushing that boundary to see if you can engage in other areas of your content or product suite, etc. In a similar way, new content is hard to personalize for, and it always needs space. And I think to explicitly call out this in terms of, it's on Netflix, new has a place on Spotify. If you're printing media, make sure you've got a space for new, because you naturally know less about it, and you want to surface that to your customer base without personalization interfering with that. And then finally, just to say and echo the point that Achille made around testing is so important. Personalization is great to try and serve up this content to the right people, but the algorithm only knows that at a point in time, and you need to align whether that was a good decision or not, and go back to teaching it and making better decisions if you've not arrived at great results. So yeah, that's the end of the talk. Just to really bring it back to the start. So effective personalization, focus on the interaction and what you're actually looking to personalize. Take it back to all of the data. What can you know and learn about customers? How do you transform that into meaning? How do you align your technology stack to actually deliver on that and make sure you've got a great product to serve to customers as well? So thank you for listening. And yes, I'll take any questions now.
Cool. Again, Adam, really great presentation there. So appreciate obviously putting that together for the listeners, and it's great to hear about the tech that obviously underpins personalization. Fascinating hearing about these real life examples, especially the ones that hit home about the Discover Weekly by Spotify. But yeah, I've brought Achille on now just because we're obviously conscious of time. You guys have been full of beans and full of content. So I'll just pick out a few questions that have cropped up. Ed posted one earlier on off the back of Achille's, but I wanted to get both of your thoughts. Do you foresee that loyalty cards will be a thing of the past in 3 years' time, and everything that will be tracked by banking cards?
Sorry, I was muted there, I realized. Yeah, no, I think Yeah, loyalty card, physical loyalty card, I think are definitely going to be phased out. People are expecting to have things on their mobile devices. And yeah, it will be tracked by banking card, but it could also be tracked by devices, device ID itself. Not all loyalty solutions are transaction based. It's important to remember that as well. So, we are involved in loyalty solutions that track, for instance, movement, which means that it's completely different. It could be Apple phones, so it could be tracking devices, for instance, as well. But yeah, physical cards are on the way out, definitely.
Yeah. And we've had a question from Pete to you, Adam, in the case of why aren't more consumer businesses doing the same as Netflix, Spotify, and Amazon?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's difficult, very difficult. So if you follow that Netflix technology blog and read some of their papers on how they actually get this done, there's a tremendous amount of thinking and data engineering that goes into this. There's obviously a cost associated with that for retailers to commit to that spend. But I think more and more, as Netflix, Spotify, Amazon, all those guys forge ahead, they're really showing what the benefits are. So Netflix say that they save £1 billion through customer churn. It's £1 billion of revenue in customer churn through personalisation. So if they had no personalisation on their platform, that's what it would cost them. So I think yeah, it's difficult, it's hard, and there's obviously been the rise of cloud technology in the last few years, meaning that businesses like white label loyalty, like Hypergroup, can step in to solve some of those problems. And I think it's just becoming clear to retailers that the reward is there as well.
Yeah, we've just had one more interesting question come through, so I think if I can keep the listeners on for a couple more minutes. Some really interesting points and examples have obviously been made, and this user particularly agrees with obviously the data-driven personalization. What about emotional factors that drive loyalty? So, for example, Apple don't have a formal loyalty scheme, but customers are happy to queue overnight and purchase the latest goods at a very much a premium price.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think that this is part of the reasons most loyalty programs fail. If you remember when I mentioned in the beginning, most loyalty programs only look at transaction as a data point. So this starts with a strategy. What is it that you want to achieve? It's the same thing with sports. You don't change teams because your the team you support gets relegated, and that's the emotional factor. So if you collect data points outside of transactions, then you can actually create that emotional loyalty. And the hyper personalization creates a deeper loyalty. I think in Apple's case, it's about the ecosystem, the operating system, the ease of use. So they've been really, really focusing on their main vision, which is to create beautiful products rather than actually most efficient or fastest, right? So,
I mean, to be fair, I think you might change allegiances depending on the result tonight. But guys, thanks for obviously putting those presentations together. Very insightful. We've just gone over the hour mark, so I'll just wrap things up. I'd like to give, like I said, a massive thank you for you guys to obviously be on today's meetups. They're informal, they're friendly, they're inclusive, and we're always open to suggestions for future topics, speakers. So if you guys know, someone or a topic that you're quite passionate about, please do get in touch with myself or any of the team at Hyper, and then we can obviously look to incorporate that for future events. Ways to keep updated. So follow our consumer analytics and data science page to Affinity and Beyond, and then the Hyper page as well, just to keep posted. But again, thanks to Achille from White Label Loyalty, Adam from Hyper. And yeah, enjoy your evening, and hopefully we see you guys soon.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks all.
Thanks, Jack, as well. Thanks.